Europe. Jupiter's small, icy moon may prove to be the most promising place to search for life in the solar system. And that sounds crazy, right? After all, we are talking about a piece of ice that dangles 5 times farther from the sun than the Earth. But let's figure out why scientists are so excited about this frozen ball. Imagine an orange. An ordinary orange from the store. This is about the size of Europa compared to Jupiter. Now imagine that this orange is covered with a thick layer of ice 20 kilometers thick. And under this ice, the ocean splashes. A real ocean of liquid water, 100 kilometers deep. For comparison, the deepest point of the Earth's oceans, the Mariana Trench, is only 11 kilometers. That is, more water may be hidden under the surface of Europa than in all the oceans of the Earth combined. How did we even know about this ocean? After all, we did not drill wells there and did not launch submarines. It all started in the 70s, when the Voyager spacecraft flew past Jupiter. They took the first detailed images of Europa, and scientists gasped. The surface of the moon turned out to be incredibly smooth, almost without craters. And this is strange, because any body in space must be dotted with craters from meteorites. Space is full of flying debris that constantly crashes into something. The absence of craters means only one thing. The surface of Europa is young. It is constantly updated. It's like someone regularly smooths it out like cream on a cake. And scientists suggested, what if there is something under this ice? Something that makes the surface move, crack, renew? Then the Galileo spacecraft arrived in the 90s. He spent 8 years with Jupiter and made a bunch of flybys of Europa. And here's what he found. When Galileo flew near Europa, instruments recorded changes in the magnetic field. And these changes were very specific, exactly the kind that occur when a magnetic field passes through a conductive liquid. Do you know that it conducts electricity perfectly? Salt water. Imagine that you are walking with a metal detector, and suddenly the device begins to beep in a special way. You dig and find a treasure chest. In about the same way, Galileo found the ocean of Europa by the characteristic squeak of magnetic fields. But that's not all. Look at the photos of the surface of Europe. It is all covered with cracks, lines, faults. It looks like a broken mirror or a frozen window with frost patterns. These cracks are called chaotic terrain, and they tell us a whole story. Do you see these dark stripes? These are the places where the ice split and warmer water rose from below, which froze in a different color. It's like when you drop something on a frozen lake, the ice cracks, and dark water is visible in the crack. Only on Europa can these cracks be kilometers wide and thousands of kilometers long. And then there's chaos. Areas where the surface looks like someone took blocks of ice the size of a city, shuffled them up like ice cubes in a glass, and froze them again. Scientists believe that this happens when the subglacial ocean breaks up, melts the ice, the blocks float and spin, and then it all freezes again in a new configuration. Okay, you might say the ocean is great, but why didn't he freeze completely? After all, at this distance from the sun, the temperature on the surface of Europa is minus 160 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, even carbon dioxide turns into dry ice. Answer: Jupiter. A giant gas ball that literally kneads Europa like dough with its gravity. Imagine a rubber ball. If you squeeze it and unclench it many times, it heats up, right? Try it, take an eraser and quickly bend it back and forth. Do you feel the warmth? This friction within the material releases energy. The same is happening with Europe. Jupiter, with its monstrous gravity, pulls it sometimes stronger or weaker, depending on which part of the orbit Europa is in. And this constant compression and stretching heats up the bowels of the moon. It's called tidal heating, and it's so powerful that it's kept the huge ocean liquid for billions of years. By the way, about Jupiter, let's imagine the scale for a second. If you stand on the surface of Europa and look up at the sky, you see Jupiter. But it's not just a dot in the sky like we see the moon. No, Jupiter occupies 24 degrees of the celestial sphere. For comparison, our moon occupies half a degree. That is, Jupiter in the sky of Europe looks 48 times larger than the moon in our sky. It's a giant orange ball with stripes and a great red spot that hangs in the sky and never moves because Europa is tidally locked. It's always facing Jupiter. And this giant constantly irradiates Europe with radiation. Because Jupiter has an insanely strong magnetic field that captures charged particles and accelerates them to enormous speeds. A real hell of radiation revolves around Jupiter. Radiation belts are thousands of times more powerful than Earth's. And Europe constantly receives a dose of this radiation. On its surface, the background radiation is such that a person would receive a lethal dose in a few minutes. But here's the interesting thing. Radiation is not only bad. It bombards the ice on Europa's surface and breaks down water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen is a light gas, it flies into space, and the oxygen remains. Some of it freezes right on the surface, some can seep down through cracks in the ice. And this is important because life needs oxygen. Well, at least such a life as we know. Let's talk about life. Why do scientists think there could be life in Europa's ocean at all? After all, this is space, cold, darkness, no sunlight under 20 kilometers of ice. Here we need to remember the Earth, specifically the depths of the Earth's oceans. Until the late 1970s, scientists believed that life in the ocean was only possible where sunlight penetrated. That is, in the upper layers where algae can photosynthesize and provide the basis of the food chain. And what about the bottom, at a depth of several kilometers in complete darkness? Well, maybe some remains fall from above and someone feeds on it. But it should be practically a desert. And then, in 1977, oceanologists sank to the bottom in the Galapagos Islands. And they found something amazing. At the bottom of the ocean, where there is no light at all, where the pressure of hundreds of atmospheres, where the temperature should be slightly above zero, they found oases of life. Hot springs, from which water gushed at a temperature of up to 400 degrees. Saturated with chemicals, hydrogen sulfide, methane, all sorts of filth. And life was teeming around these springs. Giant worms 2 meters long without mouth and intestines. Huge mollusks, crabs, Pisces. Entire ecosystems that did not depend on the sun at all. At the heart of these ecosystems were bacteria that learned to extract energy not from light, but from chemical reactions. They took hydrogen sulfide and oxygen and got energy, just like we get energy by burning wood. This process is called chemosynthesis. And that's when scientists realized, wait a minute, what if life doesn't necessarily depend on the sun? What if it only needs 3 things? Liquid water, chemical energy, and a little time. There is water on Europa, a whole ocean. Chemical energy can also be. There are most likely volcanoes at the bottom of the ocean of Europa. The same tidal forces of Jupiter that heat the interior should cause volcanic activity, like on Earth. And these volcanoes can spew out the same chemicals as on Earth. This means that there may be the same hot springs, the same oases. And time. Europe had a lot of time. The ocean has existed there for probably billions of years. Since the formation of the solar system, this is a huge period. For comparison, life on Earth appeared about 600 million years after the formation of the planet. That is, quite quickly by cosmic standards. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We have water, we have a potential source of energy, we have time. But is there really life there? We don't know. So far, we do not have a single direct proof. All we have are indirect signs and logic. But even these indirect signs are quite intriguing. For example, the color of Europe. If you look at the photos, you will see that the surface is not just white. It is yellowish, brownish, reddish in places. These colors are especially noticeable in cracks and on young areas of the surface. Where do these colors come from? Scientists conducted experiments. They took ice mixed with salts, magnesium, sodium, potassium, the very ones that should be in the ocean of Europe. And they irradiated this ice with radiation, as on Europa. And you know what? The ice changed color. It became yellowish, brown, just like on Europe. This means that these colors are the result of chemical reactions in salt ice under the influence of radiation. But here's the interesting thing. Some of these brown spots are in places where material from the ocean appears to have recently risen to the top. That is, it can be not just irradiated ice, but irradiated ocean water with everything that it contains, including possibly organic molecules, or even microbes. Dead, of course, because radiation on the surface will kill all living things in seconds. But their remains may be there. Or take hydrogen peroxide. Galileo discovered hydrogen peroxide on the surface of Europa, the same one that we use to treat wounds. Where did it come from? Again, radiation. It hits water ice and creates all sorts of oxidizing agents, including peroxide. And this peroxide can seep down through cracks and get into the ocean. And in the ocean, it can serve as a source of oxygen for microbes. There are bacteria on Earth that breathe hydrogen peroxide. Why shouldn't they be on Europe? And there may also be geysers. In 2012, the Hubble telescope recorded something strange. Columns of water vapor appeared over the southern pole of Europe, which rose to a height of 200 kilometers. Then they disappeared. Then they appeared again. These seem to be water emissions from under the ice, like the geysers in Yellowstone, only in space and 1,000 times more powerful. If these are really geysers, then this is fantastic, because it means that water from the ocean sometimes breaks out, and we can fly through these emissions in a spacecraft, collect samples and analyze them. You don't need to drill 20 kilometers of ice. Just fly and collect. It is as if Europe itself invites us to taste its ocean. True, these geysers are capricious. They are not always active, and scientists are still arguing whether they are real at all or whether it was some kind of artifact of observations. But recent data from the James Webb Telescope seem to confirm the presence of water vapor over Europa. So it looks like there are geysers there. Let's now imagine what life might look like in Europa's ocean. If it is there, of course. It won't be dolphins or whales, you can be sure. Most likely, these will be microbes, single-celled organisms that live in water or on the surface of the bottom or on the underside of ice. On Earth, we find microbes in the most incredible places. In the boiling springs of Yellowstone, where the temperature is over 100 degrees and the water is as acidic as vinegar. In the glaciers of Antarctica, frozen in ice for thousands of years. In deep mines, where there is no light and no oxygen. In nuclear reactors, where radiation will kill a person in minutes. Microbes adapt to everything. They are incredibly tenacious and inventive. Therefore, microbes in the ocean of Europe are quite real. They could live near hot springs at the bottom and feed on chemical energy. Or they could live right under the ice in pockets of liquid water and feed on organic molecules that are created by radiation at the top and seep down. Or maybe there is something more complex than microbes. Well, for example, the equivalent of our worms or shrimp. This is more speculative, but why not? On Earth, the transition from unicellular to multicellular took 1 billion years. But the ocean of Europa has existed for 3 to 4 billion years. In theory, there has been plenty of time for something more complex to evolve. But here's the problem. The evolution of complex life requires not just time, but also selection pressures and a variety of conditions. On Earth, life has evolved in an incredibly diverse environment, from hot deserts to icy tundras, from shallow lagoons to deep oceans, from acidic swamps to alkaline lakes. All this diversity of environments spurred evolution. And on Europe, there is one environment there, the ocean. Dark, cold, rather monotonous probably. Yes, there may be hot springs at the bottom, there may be cold zones under the ice, but still the variety is limited. So, most likely, if life is there, it is microbial. But even that would be amazing. Imagine that we find life in the ocean of Europa. Even if it's just bacteria. This would mean that life arose independently twice in the same solar system. Twice. And if life can arise twice here, at a distance of 5 astronomical units, then it is probably everywhere. In other star systems, on other planets, on other moons. This will change our understanding of the cosmos. We will understand that the universe is teeming with life, not a dead desert with one tiny oasis on Earth. Okay, you might say, that's all great, but how are we going to test it in the first place? After all, Europe is far away, the ocean is deep, and space agency budgets are limited. There are plans, and they are ambitious. In 2024, NASA launched a mission called Europa Clipper. This is a huge spacecraft the size of a basketball court with solar panels, which is now flying towards Jupiter. He will get there in 2030. Clipper will not orbit Europa. The radiation there is too strong. The device will quickly fail. Instead, it will orbit Jupiter and make regular flybys of Europa, about 50 flybys in a few years. On each flyby, it will fly low above the surface, at an altitude of 25 kilometers, and collect data. What data? First, it will measure the thickness of the ice crust, with the help of radar which can see through the ice. This is important because if the ice is thin, say a few kilometers, then theoretically we could drill through it in the future. If it's fat, it's 20 or 30 kilometers, it's much more difficult. Second, it will look for places where the ocean is closest to the surface, or where there have been cracks and blowouts recently. These will be priority locations for future missions. Third, it will try to fly through the geysers if they are active and collect samples. Clipper has instruments that can analyze particles on the fly, determine their chemical composition, look for organic molecules, even look for traces of biological activity. Fourth, it will map the surface in detail, every crack, every hill, every strange spot, so that we understand the geology of Europa and can choose the best place for the landing of the future probe. By the way, about landing, the European Space Agency also wants to fly to Europe. They are planning a mission called JUICE, Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer. It has already been launched in the year 2023 and is also flying towards Jupiter. JUICE will study not only Europa, but also other icy moons of Jupiter, Ganymede and Callisto. They also probably have subglacial oceans, although not as interesting as Europe. And in the future, maybe in the 30s or 40s, NASA and ESA want to send a lander to Europa, who will sit on the surface, take ice samples, analyze them on the spot, and maybe even try to drill a few meters deep. It's going to be an incredibly difficult mission, because radiation will quickly kill the electronics, so the device will only have a few days or weeks to work. But even this may be enough. And then there are dreams. In the 50s or 60s, if all goes well, maybe we'll send a cryobot. This is a probe that can melt ice and drill its way down. It will descend through the ice crust, kilometer by kilometer, and emerge into the ocean. There he will deploy a submarine or a floating probe that will explore the water, look for hot springs, take pictures and analyze. And perhaps it will find life. Sounds like science fiction, right? But the technologies are already being developed. NASA is testing prototype cryobots in Antarctica, where conditions are similar to Europe. They drill into the ice of Lake Vostok, a subglacial lake in Antarctica, which is considered a good analog of the ocean of Europe. But all this takes time and money, a lot of money. The Clipper mission costs about $5 billion. The lander will cost the same amount. And cryobot? This is generally unknown territory. Maybe 10 billion, maybe 20, plus decades of development. And here the question arises, is it worth it? Maybe it's better to spend this money on solving problems on Earth? To the fight against climate change, to medicine, to education? This is a fair question, and the answer to it depends on how you evaluate the meaning of knowledge. The search for life in the universe is one of the most fundamental questions that humanity is asking. Are we alone? This is not just scientific curiosity. It's a question about our place in the cosmos, about how special life is, about whether there is a meaning in existence. If we find life on Europa, it would mean that life is commonplace, that it arises wherever there are suitable conditions. This means that there are billions of planets with life in the galaxy. And somewhere out there, perhaps, there is intelligent life. Civilizations that look at the stars and ask the same questions as we do. If we don't find life on Europa, even after a thorough search, that will also say a lot. This will mean that life is rare, that it requires very specific conditions that do not exist on Europa, despite the ocean and chemical energy. This means that we may be alone or almost alone in the galaxy. And this makes us incredibly valuable and fragile. So the answer to the question, is it worth it? Is yes, it is. Because it's not just money for a spacecraft. It is an investment in understanding our place in the universe. Let's now talk about other icy moons. Because Europa is not the only place in the solar system with a subglacial ocean. In fact, there are several such places, and some of them are no less interesting. Take Enceladus. This is a small moon of Saturn, with a diameter of only 500 kilometers. Crumb compared to Europe. But in 2005, the Cassini spacecraft flew past Enceladus and discovered something amazing. Geysers are gushing out from the south pole of the moon. Huge fountains of water vapor and ice particles that rise hundreds of kilometers into space. Cassini flew through these geysers and analyzed their composition. And you know what he found? Water, of course. But not only. There were salts, organic molecules. Silicate particles are those that are formed only when hot water comes into contact with stones. This means that there is an ocean beneath the surface of Enceladus. And at the bottom of this ocean, hot water interacts with rocks. Exactly the same conditions as hydrothermal vents on Earth. Moreover, Cassini has detected molecular hydrogen in geysers. And hydrogen is released when hot water reacts with certain minerals on the ocean floor. This hydrogen can serve as food for microbes. There are bacteria on Earth that feed on hydrogen and carbon dioxide and emit methane. These are called methanogens, and they live near hot springs on the ocean floor. Exactly the same bacteria can be found in the ocean of Enceladus. And the coolest thing, the geysers of Enceladus are constantly active. We don't have to wait for them to work. We can fly there right now, fly through geysers, collect samples, and analyze them. This is easier than on Europa, where geysers do not always work. So why are we so fixated on Europa and not on Enceladus? There are several reasons. First, Europe is bigger. It has more ocean, more energy, more variety of conditions. Second, Enceladus is very small, and its gravity is weak. This complicates the landing. The device can simply fly into space from the slightest push. Third, Saturn is farther away than Jupiter. Flying there is longer and more expensive, but there are plans to explore Enceladus. NASA is considering a mission that will fly through Enceladus geysers, collect samples, and return to Earth. Or at least send data. That would be incredible. And then there's Titan, the largest moon of Saturn, larger than the planet Mercury. Titan has a thick atmosphere, the only moon in the solar system with a true atmosphere. And on the surface of Titan there are lakes and seas. True, not from water, but from liquid hydrocarbons, methane and ethane. The temperature there is minus 180 degrees, so the water there is harder than stone. But beneath the surface of Titan, deep in the bowels, there is also an ocean of water. Cassini confirmed this by measuring Titan's gravitational field. And this ocean may be salty, it may be in contact with rocks, it may have chemical energy. So Titan is another place where there could be life. And perhaps two types of life. Water-based life in a subglacial ocean is like on Europa, and a completely exotic life based on liquid methane on the surface. It will not be the same life as we know it, without water at wild sub-zero temperatures with completely different chemistry, but theoretically possible. In 2027, NASA plans to launch the Dragonfly mission. It will be a drone that will fly to Titan, land on its surface and fly from place to place, studying the atmosphere, the surface, organic molecules. Maybe he will find something. Ganymede is another moon of Jupiter, the largest moon in the solar system, larger than Mercury. Ganymede also has an underglacial ocean, and not one but several layers. Water, then ice, then water again, then ice again. This is because at great pressure at depth, ice becomes denser than water and sinks. So inside Ganymede there is a whole layered structure of water and ice. The European Space Agency's JUICE mission will study Ganymede. It will even enter orbit around it, the only mission that will orbit another planet's moon, and see if there is anything interesting in the oceans. So Europe is not alone. In the outer solar system, there is a whole collection of icy moons with oceans, and each of these oceans is a potential home for life. This changes our view of habitability. We used to think that life would require a planet in the habitable zone, at the right distance from the star, where it's neither too hot nor too cold, and water can be liquid on the surface. The Earth is just in this zone. Mars is on the edge. Venus is too close. But now we understand that liquid water can be found not only on the surface of planets. It may be beneath the surface, protected by an ice crust, heated by tidal forces or radioactive decay. And there may be hundreds of times more such places in the galaxy than ordinary planets in the habitable zone. Each gas giant planet can have dozens of moons, and some of them may have oceans. This dramatically increases the chances of finding life somewhere out there, among the stars. Let's get back to Europe. Suppose we send a cryobot in there one day, and it will get to the ocean and find life. What's next? How do we know that this is really life and not some kind of chemical reaction? This is a difficult question, because defining life is not as easy as it seems. We are used to life on Earth, and it is obvious to us that a bacterium is alive, but a salt crystal is not. But where is the border? Are viruses alive or not? They reproduce, but they can't do it on their own. They need a host cell. Prion, protein molecules that can replicate themselves and cause disease, are they alive? Scientists are trying to formulate a universal definition of life. Something like, life is a self-sustaining chemical system capable of Darwinian evolution. That is, it must be able to reproduce itself, use energy from the environment and transmit information to offspring with the possibility of mutations and selection. But how can we test this in practice if we find something in the ocean of Europa? Let's say a cryobot finds strange structures, some microscopic formations that look orderly. Or it detects molecules that are normally produced only by living organisms, for example, certain amino acids with a certain chirality. On Earth, all living organisms use levorotatory amino acids. Why levorotatory and not dextrorotatory is an accident of evolution. But the fact remains. If you find a mixture of amino acids, and there are only levorotatory amino acids, this is a strong sign of life, because chemistry without life produces both types in equal proportions. Or take phospholipids. These are the molecules that make up the cell membranes of all terrestrial organisms. If we find phospholipids in the water of Europa, this will also be a good sign, especially if they form vesicles, prototype cells, or metabolism. Living organisms consume certain substances and excrete others. If we find that in one place in the water the concentration of hydrogen is low and the methane is high, and this is not explained by geology, this could be a sign of methanogenic bacteria. But the most convincing proof is to find the cell itself. Photograph it under a microscope to see that it moves, divides, reacts to the environment. This will be ironclad proof. Just imagine this moment. Cryobot floats in the ocean of Europa, in pitch darkness, under 20 kilometers of ice, 5 astronomical units from Earth, includes a camera with a microscope, and he sees cage. Tiny, maybe strangely shaped, not at all like earthly cells, but clearly alive. It moves. It is shared. The signal flies to the Earth for 45 minutes. And then an image comes to NASA's Mission Control Center. Scientists look at screens. Silence. Then someone whispers, "Oh my God, this is life." And the madness begins. News travels around the world in minutes. People take to the streets, because this is the biggest discovery in the history of mankind. We are not alone. Of course, this is an idealized picture. In reality, everything will be more complicated. The data will be ambiguous. Scientists will argue. It will take years of analysis, additional missions, independent confirmations. But the essence will not change. If we find life on Europa, it will change everything. By the way, what if this life is dangerous? What if we brought samples from Europa to Earth, and there was some super aggressive microbe that would start devouring everything in its path? This is called reverse contamination, and scientists take it very seriously. When the Apollo astronauts returned from the moon, they were kept in quarantine for several weeks, just in case. True, the moon is dead, there is definitely no life there, but still a precaution. It will be even stricter with Europe. If we ever bring samples from there, they will be studied in special laboratories of the maximum level of biological protection. As with the most dangerous viruses like Ebola, the samples will be isolated, all experiments will be carried out in sealed boxes, the air will be filtered, everything will be sterilized. But to be honest, the likelihood that a microbe from Europa would be dangerous to Earth is negligible. Why? Because pathogens evolve with their hosts. The flu virus is dangerous to humans because it has evolved to infect humans, or animals close to humans. He knows how to trick our immune system, how to get into our cells, how to multiply in our body. And what about the microbe from Europe? He does not know at all what multicellular life is. He had never seen anything more complex than another microbe. Our cells will be completely alien to him. It will not be able to attach to them. It will not be able to penetrate inside. It will not be able to reproduce. It's like taking a computer virus written for Windows and trying to run it on an iPhone. It won't work because the operating systems are different. Moreover, a microbe from Europa may not survive on Earth at all, because the conditions here are completely different. On Europa, there is no oxygen in the ocean, or very little. There is no light. The pressure is huge. The temperature is low. And the Earth is full of oxygen, which is toxic to many microbes. There is light. It can be harmful. The pressure is low. The temperature is high. So it is more likely that a microbe from Europa will die quickly on Earth than begin to take over the world. But, of course, caution does not hurt. And now let's talk about direct contamination. That is, about how not to bring terrestrial microbes to Europe. Because if we send a device there will probably be some terrestrial bacteria on it. They are everywhere. On any surface, inside any device, no matter how hard we try to sterilize. And if these terrestrial bacteria get into the ocean of Europa and survive, they can spoil the entire ecosystem. Or worse, if we then find life there, we can't be sure that it's real European life and not terrestrial aliens. Therefore, all devices that fly to Europe undergo severe sterilization. They are heated, irradiated, and treated with chemicals. But it is still impossible to kill absolutely all microbes. There is always a certain number of the most tenacious spores. What to do? Scientists are working on planetary protection protocols. The idea is that the machine should be clean enough to keep the chance of contamination acceptably low. For example, less than 300,000 spores on the entire apparatus. That's very little. For comparison, you have billions of bacteria on your skin right now. And even if some germs get to Europa, most of them will die quickly. Radiation on the surface will kill them in seconds. The cold will freeze. And if they get into the ocean, it's dark, cold, and the chemistry is different. Most terrestrial microbes will not survive there. But again, there are exceptions. Extremophiles, microbes that live in the wildest environments on Earth, may have a chance. Therefore, caution is important, especially when it comes to a lander or cryobot, which will be in direct contact with the ocean. Another interesting point. What if life on Europa is related to terrestrial life? What if we find DNA, RNA, the same proteins that we have there? That would mean one of two things. Or life originated in one place, on Earth or on Europe, and then moved to another. Or life on Europa and Earth share a common ancestor somewhere else in the solar system. The transfer of life between planets is called panspermia. The idea is that a meteorite can hit a planet, throw chunks of rock into space with microbes inside. These chunks will fly through the solar system and fall to another planet, where the microbes will survive and begin to multiply. Sounds crazy, but it's quite realistic. We know that there are meteorites from Mars on Earth. They were knocked out of there by ancient impacts, and they flew to us. And some earthly rocks could fly away to Mars, or to Europe, especially in the early solar system, when there were many more meteorite bombardments. And we know that some microbes can survive in space. Experiments on the ISS have shown that the spores of some bacteria survive in a vacuum, radiation, and extreme temperatures for years. If they are inside a rock that protects them from the worst, they can survive a journey of millions of years. So, theoretically, life could have started on Mars when it was warm and humid 4 billion years ago, then migrated to Earth and from there, by chance, to Europa, or vice versa, or even somewhere in the Oort cloud, from where comets came from which they brought life everywhere. If that's the case, we'll find DNA on Europa. The same 4 bases are adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine, the same amino acids. And this will mean that all life in the solar system is one big family. Cousins, if you will. It would be incredibly interesting, but a bit disappointing, because it won't answer the main question. Does life often arise in the universe? We will still have only one example of the origin of life, simply spread throughout the solar system. But if life on Europa is completely different biochemistry, different molecules, different genetic system, then this will be a second independent example. And then we will be able to say, yes, life arises easily when there are the right conditions. This means that it is everywhere. And here's another important thing. If we find life on Europa, we can study alternative biochemistry. Maybe it's not DNA, but something else that stores genetic information. Maybe it is not proteins that perform functions there, but some other polymers. Maybe there is a different energy system, other metabolic pathways. This would open up new horizons in biology and medicine. We would understand that life can be arranged in different ways, and this would give us ideas for creating new drugs, materials, and technologies. On Earth, all biotechnology is based on the study of terrestrial life. And if we have another example with different principles, we can combine the best of both worlds. Okay, now let's fantasize a little. Let's assume that there are not just microbes on Europa, but something more complicated. Let's say the equivalent of our worms or jellyfish. What could they look like? How could they live? First, they would be blind. There is complete darkness in the ocean of Europe. No light, except perhaps a faint glow from hydrothermal vents or from bioluminescence. So vision is useless there. Instead, they would rely on other feelings. Touch, chemical signals, maybe echolocation like dolphins. Secondly, they would be pale or transparent. Why do we need pigmentation if there is no light? On Earth, deep-sea creatures are often colorless or red, because red light doesn't penetrate deep. So the red pigment is invisible in the dark, which gives camouflage. But this is not necessary on Europe either, just transparency. Third, they would be slow and economical. There is little energy in the ocean of Europa. There is no photosynthesis, which on Earth provides the basis for most ecosystems. Only chemosynthesis at hydrothermal vents, and even then locally. So there is little food, competition for it is fierce. It is beneficial to be slow, sedentary, and spend a minimum of energy. Maybe there are analogs of sponges there. Or corals. Creatures that sit on rocks near springs and filter water by filtering out bacteria. Or analogs of worms that burrow into the ground and feed on organic matter. Or even analogs of fish that swim slowly in the water column, hunting smaller animals. Or maybe there are some very strange life forms out there. For example, creatures that live on the underside of the ice shell. They attach to the ice and filter the water. Or they use ice as a substrate for growth. On Earth in Antarctica, there are bacteria that live right in the ice of lakes. They form layers inside the ice and photosynthesize using the faint light that penetrates the ice. There is no light on Europa, but you can imagine microbes living in ice and feeding on chemical energy from oxidants seeping from above. What about predators? Could they be there? Predators appeared on Earth quite early in evolution. As soon as multicellular organisms appeared, some of them began to eat each other. So there could also be predators on Europa. Slow, cunning, using ambushes. They hide at the springs and grab the gaping filter feeders. Or symbiosis. On Earth, symbiosis is a very common strategy, especially in hydrothermal vents. Vestimentifera worms do not have a mouth and intestines. Instead, bacteria live inside their bodies that synthesize organic matter from hydrogen sulfide, and the worms feed on the products of these bacteria. The same symbiosis could be on Europa. Creatures that grow bacteria inside themselves as we grow crops and feed on them. Of course, all this is speculation. We don't know if there is multicellular life there at all. Most likely not, but you can imagine. Or take this question. Could intelligent life evolve in Europa's ocean? Dolphins or octopuses of Europe that are building a civilization under the ice? Well, that's unlikely, for several reasons. First, the mind requires a lot of energy. The human brain makes up 2% of the body weight, but consumes 20% of the energy. This is a huge cost. In the context of Europe's scarce energy, such costs are unprofitable. It's easier to be stupid and thrifty. Secondly, the mind develops under the pressure of selection. On Earth, the ancestors of people lived in a complex social environment where it was necessary to compete, cooperate, plan, and deceive. Plus, climatic conditions have changed, new challenges have appeared. All this prompted the development of big brains. And on Europe, the conditions are stable. The ocean has been the same for billions of years. There are no seasons, no climate change, no migrations. Just darkness, cold, and hydrothermal springs. Why do we need reason there? Third, intelligent life usually arises on land or at the land-water interface. Because on land it is easier to manipulate objects, build tools, and use fire. In the water, all this is more difficult. Dolphins and octopuses on Earth are very smart, but they don't build civilizations. Because there is no fire in water, there is no metallurgy, there are not many technologies. And there is no land on Europe at all. Only the ocean and ice. So the chances of a reasonable life are slim to none. But again, this is all based on our experience of mortality. Maybe there are forms of intelligence in the universe that we can't even imagine. The collective mind of a colony of bacteria, or a mind based on chemical reactions in liquid hydrocarbons, or even something intangible. We don't know, and that's what makes the search for life so exciting. Each discovery can turn our ideas upside down. Okay, let's get back to the science. Suppose we found life on Europa, microbial life. What does this mean for the future of humanity? How will this affect us? Firstly, it will give impetus to space research. If there is life on Europa, then you need to study other icy moons. Enceladus, Titan, Ganymede, even the distant Triton of Neptune. Each of them can hide life. That means hundreds of new missions, new technologies, new discoveries. Secondly, it will change philosophy and culture. People have been arguing about our place in the universe for centuries. Religions are built on the idea that man is the crown of creation, that the Earth is a special place. The discovery of life beyond Earth would undermine this idea. We will understand that we are not unique, that life is a natural phenomenon, like stars or planets. This can be a shock to many people, but it can also unite humanity, because we will understand that we are all Earthlings, and we have a common connection with life in the universe. Thirdly, it will affect science. Biology will become not just the science of terrestrial life, but the science of life in general. We will be able to formulate universal laws, just as physics formulates the laws of gravity or thermodynamics. Astrobiology will turn from a hypothetical discipline into a real one, with data, experiments, discoveries. Fourthly, it will give hope. If there is life on Europa, then it can be anywhere. In other star systems, on other planets. This means that there may be intelligent life somewhere out there. Civilizations that may have gone through the same stages as we do, or completely different, and maybe one day we will meet. Or, on the contrary, it will give a warning. If we find life on Europa, but it's only microbial despite billions of years of evolution, it could mean that the transition to complex life is very difficult. That most life in the universe gets stuck in the bacterial stage and never gets complicated. This means that we, humans, are an incredibly rare phenomenon. And this makes us even more valuable and responsible for the preservation of life and mind. By the way, about preservation, if we find life on Europa, do we need to protect it? Does she have a license? Can we continue to send probes there that could disrupt the ecosystem? These are ethical questions to which there are no simple answers. On the one hand, scientific curiosity and benefit for humanity. On the other hand, respect for another form of life. On Earth, we have created nature reserves, national parks, protected areas where nature is left alone. Maybe Europe should become such a reserve on a cosmic scale? Where can we study life but not exploit, change, or destroy? Or maybe we decide that life everywhere should flourish, and if we can help life on Europa develop, say by providing nutrients or energy, we should. This is called terraforming. Only for moons, not planets. Although terraforming is the wrong word. because we are not making Europe look like Earth. Maybe bioforming? But this is all in the future. Now our task is simply to find out if there is life there. And for that, we have exciting decades of research ahead of us. The Europa Clipper mission will reach Jupiter in 2030. It will conduct almost 50 flights past Europa, collecting a huge amount of data, and maybe find definitive evidence of the ocean, hot springs, organic molecules, or even biosignatures, traces of life. JUICE will arrive around the same time and will study Ganymede, Callisto, and also make flybys of Europa. The two missions together will give us an unprecedented amount of information. And then, in the 30s, perhaps a lander will fly, who will sit on the surface, take ice samples, analyze them, and perhaps he will find a cage. Frozen, dead, but a cage. With characteristic structures, with organic molecules, with signs of life. And in the 40s or 50s, it was Cryobot, who will drill through the ice, get to the ocean and see life with his own eyes. He will take a picture of it, record a video, and it will send this data to Earth. And then we will know, at last, after centuries of fortune-telling, fantasies, disputes, are we alone in the universe? The answer will be no. But even if we don't find life on Europa, even after all these missions, all these efforts, that will also be an important outcome. This will tell us that life does not arise wherever there is water and energy, that we need some other conditions that we do not understand. And this will push us to search further, on Enceladus, on Titan, on exoplanets around other stars. Because the search for life is not about one mission or one moon. This is about the fundamental question about the nature of the universe. And we won't stop until we find the answer. Europe is just the beginning, a small icy moon that may turn out to be the key to the greatest mystery. Beneath its frozen surface, in the dark ocean, life may be hiding. Life that developed independently of the earthly one. A life that will show us that we are not alone. And this is exciting. It's inspiring. It makes us look up at the sky and dream, because the cosmos is full of mysteries, and each of them is waiting for us to solve it. So stay tuned. In a few years, we will learn much more about Europe. Maybe we will find traces of life, or maybe only traces of water, chemistry, geology. But either way, it's going to be an incredible journey. A journey to one of the most intriguing places in the solar system, to the moon that can change our history. Europe is waiting, and we will arrive soon.